The invitation was supposed to be a joke. By the time Marcus Reed stepped through the glass doors of the most expensive restaurant in Seattle, the woman who had laughed while sending it was staring at him as if she had just seen a ghost. Before we get into the story, tell us where you're watching from and drop your city in the comments. And if you enjoy stories filled with secrets, unexpected twists, second chances, and moments that restore your faith in people, take a second to like, subscribe to True Tales Stories, and share this one with someone who loves a powerful story. Marcus was 38, a single father, and the kind of man most people overlooked until they needed something done. He worked as a private driver for wealthy clients, drove an aging black sedan that had been paid off years ago, and lived in a small apartment with his 9-year-old daughter, Amara. He didn't complain about his life. He simply worked harder than most people ever knew. Every morning began before sunrise. He packed Amara's lunch, braided her hair when she asked him to, dropped her at school, and spent the rest of the day driving executives, investors, and celebrities across the city. At night, he studied business courses online after Amara went to sleep because he had once dreamed of owning a transportation company of his own. He rarely spoke about that dream. Then came the invitation. His regular client, Evelyn Carter, was the 34-year-old CEO of Carter & Vale, a rapidly growing technology company. Evelyn was brilliant, wealthy, confident, and accustomed to getting exactly what she wanted. She had hired Marcus 6 months earlier after firing 3 drivers for being unreliable. Marcus had never missed a pickup. One afternoon, after Marcus delivered Evelyn to her office, she handed him a cream-colored envelope. "You're invited to dinner Friday," she said. Marcus looked at the envelope. "Me? Yes. 7:30. The Beaumont." He smiled politely. "Is this a work dinner?" Evelyn's lips curved into a strange little smile. "Something like that." Marcus thanked her and left. What he didn't know was that Evelyn had spent lunch telling her closest friends about him. One of them had teased her about always complaining that rich men were arrogant and shallow. Evelyn, laughing, had said that maybe she should invite her driver instead. Everyone had laughed. So she sent the invitation. She expected him to decline. Instead, Friday evening arrived, and Marcus stood in front of his closet staring at the only suit he owned. It was navy, carefully pressed, and nearly 8 years old. His father had worn it to Marcus's wedding. He almost didn't go. Then Amara came into the room holding his cuff links. "Daddy, you said you were going." Marcus smiled. "I did." "Then go." He kissed her forehead, arranged for his neighbor to stay with her, and left. At 7:31 p.m., the restaurant's private dining room was full of executives and investors. Evelyn sat at the center of the table wearing a deep red gown. She was surrounded by people who knew her company was about to announce a massive expansion. Then the doors opened. Marcus walked in. The room became quiet. He wasn't wearing his old navy suit. He wore a perfectly tailored light gray tuxedo, black bow tie, polished shoes, and a silver watch that looked understated but unmistakably expensive. Evelyn's smile disappeared. One of her friends leaned toward her. "Is that your driver?" Evelyn couldn't answer. Marcus approached the table calmly. "Good evening, Evelyn." She stood slowly. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" He looked genuinely confused. "You invited me." A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Then a man near the end of the table laughed. "Wait. You actually thought this was a real invitation?" Marcus's expression changed. Not dramatically. He simply looked at Evelyn. She couldn't meet his eyes. The laughter died. Marcus nodded once. "I see." He turned to leave. Then Evelyn noticed something on his jacket. A small silver pin. The symbol belonged to an organization she recognized instantly. The Carter Foundation. Her father's foundation. "Marcus, she said. He stopped. How do you have that? He turned around. Because your father gave it to me. The room went silent again. Evelyn stared at him. Her father had died 3 years earlier. Before his death, he had quietly established a scholarship program for children of low-income families. Evelyn had never known who managed the program after his death. Marcus explained that his late father had worked with Evelyn's father years ago. Marcus himself had been one of the scholarship recipients. That scholarship had paid for his college education. But there was more. Marcus had graduated with honors in logistics and business management. He had spent years working in transportation before becoming a driver because he needed flexible hours while raising Amara alone after her mother left. And 6 months earlier, when Evelyn hired him, Marcus had recognized a serious flaw in Carter and Vale's transportation contracts. He had quietly documented it. He had even sent an anonymous report to the company's board. The problem wasn't a small accounting mistake. Millions of dollars were being lost through fraudulent vendor contracts created by one of Evelyn's senior executives. The board had been investigating for months. Marcus was the anonymous source. Evelyn's face went pale. You knew? I knew something was wrong, Marcus said. I didn't know who was responsible. Her closest friend looked at Evelyn. You invited the man who saved your company here as a joke? Evelyn looked down. For the first time in years, she had no clever answer. Marcus reached into his pocket and placed a folder on the table. Your board will receive the rest of the evidence Monday morning. Evelyn stared at the folder. Why didn't you tell me? Marcus looked at her for several seconds. Because I wanted to know whether you respected me when you thought I was just your driver. The words landed harder than an accusation. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She remembered every time she had spoken to him without looking up from her phone. Every time she had assumed he was simply lucky to have the job. Every time she had laughed about inviting him to dinner. I was wrong, she whispered. Marcus nodded. Yes, you were. He walked toward the door. Then Evelyn said something that stopped him. Please don't leave. Marcus turned. Not because he owed her anything. Because for the first time that night, her voice contained no arrogance. Only regret. Evelyn stepped away from the table. I can't undo what I did. But I can stop pretending I know people's worth by looking at their clothes, their jobs, or their bank accounts. Marcus studied her. And what are you going to do about it? Offer you a position. He almost smiled. What position? Chief Operating Officer. The room erupted in whispers. Marcus shook his head. Don't offer me a job because you feel guilty. I'm not. She took a breath. I'm offering it because I've spent 6 months watching you solve problems nobody else noticed. And because my father was right about something I refuse to understand. Marcus waited. He used to say the most valuable person in a room is often the one nobody bothered to notice. Marcus looked at the folder on the table, then at Evelyn. I'll consider it. 3 months later, Marcus became the company's new chief operating officer. But he kept one thing from his old life. Every Friday evening, he picked up Amara from school himself. And on the first Friday after his promotion, Evelyn saw him waiting outside the building in the same old black sedan. She smiled. Marcus rolled down the window. You need a ride? Evelyn laughed. Only if you're not too expensive now. Marcus grinned. You're going to have to check with my daughter. She's my boss. And for the first time, Evelyn laughed without laughing at anyone. Sometimes the greatest lesson isn't discovering who someone really is. It's realizing how wrong you were when you thought you already knew. Would you have walked away, or stayed long enough to hear the truth?